That was our last argument after Patricia was served with the papers, but before we went to court. We were both pretending, playing roles for each other. I pretended I still wanted to talk things out, even though the coffin lid on our marriage had slammed shut. Barely a private investigator had shown me the picture of her kissing Bradley Jacobs. By the 5th minute of their first videotape, he was already in the grave, and I was filling his lid with earth. As for Patricia, I don't know what exactly she was faking. Maybe that her continued infidelity was still a legitimate subject for discussion. Maybe that we could somehow reasonably agree to stay married while she slept with Bradley on the side. My wife, Patricia Wilson, maiden name Anderson, is a lawyer. Bradley is actually one of her paralegals, and finding ways to be reasonable about completely unreasonable things is what she does for a living. At home, I suppose she does it pro bono. The phrase, "Matt, be reasonable," has been a constant refrain for most of our 25-year marriage. But after I handed her the papers, she added another phrase to her repertoire. Fragile male ego, meaning, "Matt, this isn't about me or who I am or am not sleeping with. It's about your fragile male ego." God, I hate that line. And of course, we didn't get too far into this last discussion before she decided to drop it. "Matt, if you could see beyond your fragile male ego, you'd realize that you're not threatened by this at all." She gave me her most hopeful, most reasonable smile. "I don't love him, and in a few months we'll both be moving on. You and I will still be able to ride off into the sunset together. I have to hand it to Patricia. She's very brave." As she said this, she was running her fingers over the stem of a glass of her favorite unaged Australian Chardonnay in an oak barrel, standing next to a manila folder on our kitchen table. The folder, in turn, contained my divorce petition, as well as some of the crudest photos a private investigator had managed to take. In other words, the Titanic has collided with an iceberg, the orchestra is playing the hymn, "Nearer, Lord, to Thee," and women and children are being led to the lifeboats. Meanwhile, Patricia says that if I'm sensible, if I can overcome my fragile male ego, we might be able to make it to port. The thing is, Patricia thinks we're still negotiating, but I don't want to decide anything anymore. I want to end this conversation. "Patricia, let's stop for a second," I said, interrupting her half-heartedly. "You keep talking about my fragile male ego, saying that if I can overcome it, we'll be fine. What exactly do you mean by that? By fragile male ego?" She frowned for a moment, slightly offended at being interrupted. "Well, it's very simple, Matt. You're afraid of competition, afraid that somehow you won't be able to fit in." She smiled at me again, affectionately, slightly condescendingly. "But honey, you don't have to worry. You're my boyfriend, my man." "Who's Bradley then?" She blushed. "Bradley? Well, Bradley's just a toy, like an exercise machine. I'm not going to replace you or fall out of love with you. You have nothing to worry about." I gave her the slightly frowning, slightly bemused look that husbands use when they want their wives to feel superior, usually to get away with something. "So, just to be clear, you think I'm worried that you're going to fall out of love with me or replace me with a younger model?" She nodded, the affectionate smile growing wider. "And you think I'm a little vulnerable because of that? You think I need to be reassured?" "Exactly. And sweetheart, you have nothing to worry about." I spoke slowly, like I was figuring things out. "And somehow this fragility has something to do with me being a man?" She patted my arm, affectionately, condescendingly. "Oh, honey, it's not just you. All men have fragile egos." Her smile widened. "Part of what we wives do is we support our boyfriends, keep you believing in yourself." I wanted to yell at her, ask her how the hell sex with a 25-year-old was supposed to support me, but I knew that would only make her horny. I wasn't surprised Patricia bought into the whole women are stronger than men, pop psychology thing. We'd been going around that nonsense for years. But I was tired. We were almost at the end, and I was tired of walking. "You know, Patricia, you've been using that phrase for a long time," I said, glaring at her. "I let it pass over my ears. One of the things I've learned after 25 years with you is to pick my battles. But if there's one thing I want to leave you with tonight, it's realizing how much this whole argument is bullshit." She started to object, but I continued. "The reason people focus on the fragile male ego is because it seems abnormal. It's like testicles. How many times have you seen a stupid video of a guy getting kicked in the balls? She nodded, about to let me talk about it for a bit before pulling me back in. A lot. Yeah, it's funny, at least for women, because men always seem so strong, and that alone is enough to make most men fall over and throw up. A strong, scary big man suddenly curls up in a ball trying to catch his breath. You know what I mean? Yeah, but it's not funny to watch a woman in the same situation, is it? She nodded. But why wouldn't it be? If one person curled up in pain is funny, why isn't the other? Because it's violence. A man hitting a woman is violence. And a woman hitting a man isn't? I shook my head. Never mind, we're getting off topic. The point is that watching a woman squirm in pain is not funny because we are taught to see women as fragile and weak, so the idea of making a woman cry is neither strange nor particularly funny. I don't see where you're going with this. I took a deep breath. The point is the same with ego. When I go to work every day, my friends, make jokes about my sexual prowess, the size of my belly, my thinning hair, and anything else they can find to tease me about. Now imagine if that's what your girlfriends did to you. Imagine walking into the office and immediately getting comments about every area that seems vulnerable to you. How would you feel? God, she said, I can't imagine a woman doing that to a friend, and certainly not all the time. But that's what happens to us big, strong men. We shrug, throw back our comment, and go about our business. By now, I was patting her hand, affectionately, condescendingly. I wonder if she noticed. In fact, the only area where I allow myself to feel fragile and vulnerable is in this house. It is here that I take off my armor, show my soft pink underbelly, and trust that you won't take advantage of it. What you see as my fragile male ego is me relaxing in the only place in the world where I feel I can be fragile. Do you understand me? Patricia smiled and nodded. I watched her gather herself for another attack. But that's the thing, Matt. You're safe here. You can be vulnerable. I'm not going to leave or give up what we have because of an affair. I took off my glasses, rubbed the bridge of my nose. You still don't get it, Patricia. I believed you when you said I was the world's best lover, even though I knew it wasn't objectively true. Hell, I've only had one lover in the last 25 years, not that much experience. I grinned. I believed you when you said I was enough for you, that my body still turned you on. I took you at your word, even when I realized you were just boosting my ego. With you, I chose to be fragile because I knew I could trust you. And I'm so glad you did. And you betrayed that, I shouted, slamming my hand on the table. Her eyes widened and she fell silent. I took a deep breath and tried to find a calm voice again. About 6 months ago, I started to notice that you weren't so careful with my fragility. I noticed the way you expressed yourself when I took my shirt off, the way you closed your eyes when we had sex. Caught the sarcastic comments about going to the gym or giving up beer. She looked up at me shocked, and I continued. I noticed you stopped talking about your day or asking about mine. I noticed you weren't around me. Even before you started having sex with Bradley, I realized you weren't safe for me anymore. You weren't going to protect my vulnerability. Matt, She paused. Had the lawyer run out of words? I looked her in the eye, firmly. They glittered, and I'm sure mine did too. I've tried to fight it, Patricia. Took you out to dinner more often, commented on your clothes. Tried to schedule more vacations, more time just for us. Tried to let you know you were special to me, dressed better, started going to the gym. Hoped you'd remember how special I was to you. I looked down at my hands. Not now. I can't let her see the tears. I can't be vulnerable. Enough of this. It didn't work. You found reasons to cancel dinners, reasons we couldn't go on vacation. Complimenting your clothes, I could see that you were worried I'd notice you were dressing for him. And sending flowers to your office, I never got a reply. I looked up at her. Later, when you started picking fights to avoid having sex with me, I realized I had failed. You had forgotten that I was special, and you were well on your way to no longer being special to me. I've never had a fight to avoid sex, I groaned. Really? That's all she got out of it? Patricia, can't you just be honest, at least with yourself, if not with me? You've been pushing me away for 6 months. She looked up at me for a second, but then lowered her eyes back to her hands. Charming hands. I shrugged. Anyway, yeah, my ego was fragile back then. I spent a lot of time in the office with the door closed, lamenting our relationship. Tried to put on a strong face while at work so you wouldn't see how deeply you hurt me. Started looking for reasons to leave the house so I wouldn't have to spend time with someone who could hurt me and who now so clearly wants to do so. She looked shocked. I smiled slightly and patted her hand again. But you'll be happy to know that my fragile ego has been healed. I found other things to do, other people who made me feel special. She looked up, a question in her eyes. I grinned. No, I wasn't cheating on you, but I noticed that some women at the gym didn't look like my body was pushing them away too much these days. Anyway, by the time I had proof and was talking to a lawyer, you wouldn't have even noticed that my fragile male ego had ever been hurt. Are we done? That's what I thought. I finally said what I had to say, and I thought maybe she finally heard me. Maybe now we could move on. But no, I was married to a lawyer, and there's no such thing as a lost case. But Matt, there was no need for that, she shouted. Yes, I admit that I've been, lately, distracted, but I never stopped loving you. In my world, you've always come first. I'm sorry that I didn't see how fragile you were, how much I hurt you. Patricia kept talking, kept weaving beautiful pictures out of her words, but I couldn't hear her. There's that word again, fragile. She still didn't understand anything, and I realized she probably never would. I didn't try to make it nice anymore. Patricia, stop it! I barked. I think she could hear the anger in my voice, even though I tried to hide it. I took a long, slow breath. Let the air out. You still don't get it, do you? Still think it's all about my fragility, my fragile male ego, don't you? Honey, there's no shame in that. All men, Patricia. We all have fragile egos, and we trust those we care about to protect it. Well, yes, of course, but men are especially fragile. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I leaned into her like I wanted to confide in her. I tried my best to fight the sarcasm, but she wasn't making it easy for me. Patricia, I've spent most of the last 25 years trying to find a way to be honest with you without hurting your ego. When you asked me if that color lipstick looked good on you or if that dress made you look fat, I had to find an answer that wouldn't hurt your feelings, but also wouldn't let you walk out of the house looking like a crazy clown or a tight sausage. Patricia blushed, and her eyes widened. She wasn't used to such candor. Suddenly I realized I was laughing. Patricia, when I say things like, honey, I'm not sure that lipstick goes with that blouse, or, wow, could you change your clothes? I'm not sure I'm okay with our neighbors drooling over your boobs all night. I was giving you an out, pretending that I wasn't sure what I was saying or that my fragile male ego was being threatened. And do you know why I was doing it? She shook her head. All because I didn't want to jeopardize your ego. That's nonsense, Patricia boiled. I can think of several instances where you explicitly said something didn't look good. I grinned. Oh, I'll admit that I've let things slip from time to time, I said. I think we both remember what happened on those days when I commented on your eyeshadow, like a prostitute's. Or when I told you that yes, that dress makes your ass look big. Big, hurt eyes, a cold thank you for your honesty, and a week or two of negative bedroom temperatures. I quickly realized that honesty is definitely overrated when it comes to giving my wife my opinion. So for 25 years you lied to me? Patricia looked like she was ready to explode. It's time to call it a day. Let's just say I gave you a selective and carefully edited version of the truth. I told you that you were the most beautiful woman in the world, that your trips to the gym cut a decade off your age, that your ass is as big as the Venus of Milos, gave you extravagant compliments that, like your compliments to me, were designed to show you how I see you, and, in the process, boost your fragile ego. My ego is not fragile. Patricia, you have a fat ass. She looked at me like I'd just punched her in the chest. What? I smiled at her. You have stretch marks. Your breasts are sagging. The roots of your hair are graying and your teeth are yellowing. Those expensive creams you buy don't hide the wrinkles on your face or your second chin. Honey, it's time to start thinking about how to age gracefully because you can't fight it anymore. She gasped, her eyes widening. A few punches, all right on target. Jesus Christ, Matt. Patricia, remember the feeling you're having right now. Think about it. Now imagine I told you I was gonna fuck some pretty young thing in the office. Someone 10 or 20 years younger than you. Firm ass, luscious breasts. She tries all her tricks on me because our relationship is still in its infancy and she is still just starting her game. Imagine me coming over to your house from her a couple times a week. How's your ego doing? Feeling a little fragile? Patricia's a little gray. Yeah, she mumbled. That's what you never realized, Patricia. I'm not blind. You're not the most beautiful woman in the world. Hell, I could probably walk out my front door and find half a dozen women in our neighborhood who are objectively more attractive than you. I looked at her again, but her face was still drawn out. I could see the tears on her cheeks. You're not the prettiest, or the smartest, or the most fun. But to me, that's exactly what you were. You were the prettiest, the most fun, the best. As I saw all your flaws, I also saw the life we had together. Your breasts sagged because you fed them to our children. Your ass is fat because you carried them in your body. You have wrinkles from laughing because we laughed together. I looked at the road map of your body and saw the miles we traveled together. I treasured each of those miles and the footprints they left. She looked up, and it was like the last scene in a boxing movie, the one right before the final knockout. She sobbed. What about now? What do you see now? God, I thought. She's asking for it. It would have been so easy. Part of me, hell, a big part of me, wanted to deliver the knockout blow, the one that would leave her so shattered that she'd spend the next few years tossing from bed to bed trying to prove she still had it. And here she is, jutting her chin out, waiting for the ceiling to collapse. But that's the point. It's not about landing the knockout punch anymore. In fact, it wasn't even about Patricia. She looked in the mirror, saw that time was running out, and decided she could find the fountain of youth in a younger man. And then, when she was exposed, she tried to stand her ground through defiance and clever words. I think it's clear to both of us that she is weak and small, and will now be left alone. As for me, I cried my tears in my car, outside my office door, in a park a mile from my house. I spent months hiding my pain from my wife as I struggled, and then mourned the death of my marriage. Now I needed to plan the rest of my life. The first step was to ask myself who I wanted to see in the mirror every morning. The guy who took a cheap shot? The guy who won some meaningless contest with a weak woman who lost her life? A bully? No. I wanted to see the same guy I see now, a merciful man, a good man, an honest man. I took another deep breath and covered Patricia's hand with mine again. What do I see now? Now I see the woman I spent the best years of my life with. I see the one I trusted with my fragility for as long as I could. I squeezed her hand. I see the one I'm really going to miss. She stood up, pasting a smile on her face. That one was crooked, and it didn't help with the tears. It doesn't have to be like this, she said. We can find our way back. No, we can't, I sighed. You're right about one thing, Patricia. I'm not fragile, but here my trust was fragile. I'll never be able to take off my armor again. Never be able to let you in. Maybe we could live together. We could sleep in the same bed, go on vacations, make some memories. But the thing is, I'll always be watching you. Wondering if you're appreciating my body, if you're comparing me to someone else in bed. Wondering if you're staying with me because you love me or just out of habit. I'm not going to live like that, Patricia. I think I have 30 or 40 more years, and I don't want to spend them with someone I don't trust, pretending to feel safe and secure when I really don't. I don't deserve that. And frankly, if you really love me, you wouldn't ask me to go through that. For all her legal skills, Patricia is pretty transparent, at least to me. I could see in her eyes that she was thinking up counter-arguments, testing them out, seeing which ones might work. And then I saw it when she realized that it was really over. It was like the light went out in her eyes. Once Patricia decided not to fight, the divorce went through quickly. We traded jewelry for tools and a TV, furniture for my partially restored Mustang. In the end, we sold the house, split everything in half, and saved a lot of money on lawyers. The great thing about divorce is that even when it's finalized, it's not over. I still see Patricia often, at our children's birthdays, anniversaries, Christmases. Sometimes she brings a beau with her, and I usually have a woman under my arm. For the last year or so, it's the same woman, and I can see from the look in Patricia's eyes that she understands what that means. I try not to gloat, but sometimes my ego, well, it can be a little fragile.